So recently, somebody tagged me and asked me to comment on a Facebook post. And my first instinct is like, girl, I have enough drama. You don't need to be bringing me into other people's drama. But I kind of read the post and thought it was interesting and thought I could maybe say something. And it was about a person of color who was gay, a black guy who had matched with someone on Tinder, a white guy. And the white guy's profile said, I'm not looking for a hookup. I'm all about long-term relationships. And then in the chat, the white guy asked the black guy, oh, well, how big is your fill in the blank? Sorry, I try to keep the podcast clean because, it's on iTunes and stuff like that. So that person was obviously the person of color. The black guy was very, very upset. Oddly, like a white person asked me to comment on it. And I was like, okay, so I have a few just kind of little hints to sort this out because a few people have said to me, other people of color, it's like, oh, if a white guy approaches me, I don't even know if they're just using me for a hookup or if they're actually somewhat interested in getting to know me as a person. And as a person of color myself, I totally get that. So I literally have two insanely simple rules to figure out, are you being fetishized? And the first one is, I know this is going to sound crazy, ask them directly. And it's kind of funny. So it's 50% funny, 50% tragic. Someone did this to me not too long ago, whereas it was a European doctor messages me and instantly goes into, tell me about your fill in the blank. And I just asked him outright, like, are you fetishizing me? Kind of, and I added like an LOL, like I was trying to be nice and give him an out. I mean, sometimes you can go off on people on chats and sometimes they deserve it, but sometimes you wanna at least, if depending on how you're feeling and what you feel the context is, sometimes you want to give people an out like, ooh, you're getting into territory that might be a little bit racially offensive. And of course, this European guy was just like, yes, I am. And it was like, are you serious? And I tried to say, again, in a nice way, like, that's a little bit offensive. It's a little, and then he continued on like, I want to use you. And it was like, okay, so this guy has no racial awareness. Part of it was hurtful, I'm not going to lie. And then part of me was laughing. And I was like, I got to work that into a writing piece somewhere. Because it's just the complete lack of racial awareness and the complete inability to perceive how that could be offensive. It was kind of funny, but it was really hurtful at the same time. Now, I think most people, if they're raised in a country that has a history of having black people in it, aka, America, Canada, Britain, people will try to back off. Like some people will get, oh, I'm heading into wrong territory. Even if they are trying to fetishize you, they'll probably say that they aren't, but then they'll probably run away because they've been called out. And yes, they're going to go silent, and that might be somewhat disappointing because maybe you were thinking, oh, well, he's going to go on a date with me. But it would have been more disappointing had you guys met and the date had gone terribly wrong because he was just trying to use you as a sex object and then you were thinking he was open to something more. And I promise you, you dodged a bullet. It's going to suck in the moment. It never feels good to be racially discriminated against. But it's just funny. So if you just call people out and ask them, and you can do it politely, you can do it not politely. I prefer to, depending on the context, try to be polite about it. Because if you hit people too hard with too much heat too fast, they actually won't be able to hear your message. And I'd rather them hear the message and maybe have a plant a seed that might open their awareness later. But either way, they might lie and say, oh, I wasn't doing that when they were, and they'll probably then back off, but you dodged a bullet. The second one is even more revealing, and it's something I started doing because it just separates wheat from the chaff really quickly. And this actually doesn't just apply to if you're a person of color, it could apply to literally anything if you're part of a group that is somewhat marginalized. So the other thing I just ask is, have you ever dated someone like me before? So if you're black, you could say, have you ever dated a black guy before? If you're Asian, have you ever dated an Asian guy before? If you have a different body type, you could say, have you ever dated someone with my body type? That's very revealing because what a gay guy is willing to commit to versus what he's willing to hop into a bed one time, and have one shag and that'll be it. Those are two very, very different things. So who a gay guy is saying, I will cut off all other gay guys, at least maybe just temporarily, but I will stop dating all other gay men for this one guy. That tells you everything you need to know about a person. And so if they're trying to get you into bed and they've never dated a person of color before, that lets you know that you're being fetishized and you should probably avoid that person. Now, if it's 3 a.m. and you want to roll the dice, that's your choice. Go for it. Hope it all works out. But in the new age of Grindr and dating apps, and again, this is where I feel like I'm grandpa, like wagging my finger, like back in my day, like 7 years ago. Back in my day, Sonny, like we were nicer. There was pre-Grindr, people were more open to, oh, he might not be up my type, but I'm open to seeing where it leads. I perceive a lot less of that in the Grindr age. People know what they want and they're going for it really fast. Now, you might ask, well, what if he lies? Like, because people then, their white fragility might kick in and they might be like, oh, I've dated black guys before, or I've dated Asian guys before. And the flip side of that is if they do lie to you, they're going to run away. Because just as a trend, as human nature, unless they're just a full-on sociopath, in which case, good luck. But unless they're like a full-on sociopath or they just love to lie, once someone's lied and they've made a really bold lie like that, their instinct will be to retreat. Because they don't want to have to answer follow-up questions and they don't want to be put in a situation where they might have to deliver on the thing they just lied about, right? So again, you might find they'll say, oh, I've dated lots of black guys, and then they'll go radio silent. You dodged a bullet because again, what would have happened is you might have walked into that date thinking, oh, he's really open, he's really, open to getting to know me as a person, and he never was. So better to find that out on the app, which is far less traumatic than finding it out in person, which can be much more harmful and hurtful. So again, my recommendation is, one, be polite, and, you can phrase it like a question, like, are you fetishizing me? Or it feels like, blah, blah, blah. If you want to be polite, you can follow it up with an explanation. Like, I'm sure you can understand that I've had a few nasty experiences of, white guys trying to use me for my as a sex object, and I'm just trying to, sort that out. I'm sure you would never do that. You can be polite, but again, if you're angry and the person stepped to you in a really offensive way, you can just tell them off. I try to be somewhat nice about it, but sometimes, people need to know they've done something hurtful and they've done something rude. So context is king on that one. And then again, find out who they dated. Now again, you may not just, as this is more dating advice, you may not want to throw that out as your second question, like, hi, how are you? Have you ever dated a black guy before? But you want to have that question come up at some point in the chat, preferably before you've decided to meet them for a drink, because I think it'll just reveal a lot of stuff. And if you're dating them a few times, they'll reveal who they're willing to commit to and who they're not willing to commit to. And if they're not willing to commit to someone who looks like you, that's frustrating. I get that. But from your perspective, I write books and do podcasts so you can date smarter given the realities we live in. So I wish we all lived in a panacea where everyone accepted everyone. But from your perspective, you want to get rid of people who are trying to use you and make time for people who are really trying to get to know you. The other thing I want to say, because granted, I have no idea of the demographics of my listeners, but if you're a white person, kind of two things I would add. One, be careful of the sex stereotypes, be mindful of that. I kind of feel like it's one of these things where, probably most of my white listeners would say, well, yeah, that's obvious. And then a chunk of them might be like, wow, that's breaking news. But yeah, you want to be sensitive to don't go there. But again, context is king, because if you're chatting on Grindr at 3 a.m, kind of anything goes. So the other thing you want to be aware of if you're a white person and you're thinking of going on a date with a person of color, you just want to be sensitive to the fact that that person's probably been racially abused online a lot. Like a lot, So now that doesn't mean, oh, this person is such a traumatized victim, we can't have a laugh and we can't have fun and that kind of thing. But you just want to be make a little bit more space, give a little bit more room for that person to kind of be themselves, reveal their vulnerability reveal the fact that they've been hurt, because it's probably something you haven't experienced before. And if you have, it's probably on a much, much, much smaller scale than what the person of color has experienced. Again, PC disclaimers, I'm not saying no white gay guy receives abuse in various different contexts, but as a trend, the average white guy in the West has probably received far less racial abuse than the average person of color in the West. So you just kind of want to be a little bit sensitive and be mindful of that. So yeah, real quick update. Someone tagged me. I said I was actually going to comment on it. Hope that helps. I'm going to be doing more gay dating advice for various reasons. I'll explain that kind of probably in another podcast. I know I've been trying to focus on more community, where people can find gay community that's been lost in the age of apps. But yeah, and if you haven't done so yet, please head over to my YouTube channel, like and subscribe. I've kind of got some cool videos up there that I'm not exactly translating into iTunes. So yeah, thank you so much, and talk to you guys soon.